like to come up and take the microphone and tell the story which they have just heard from their new partner. It's a bit of a Chinese whispers thing going on. Madam, yeah, come on up. Fantastic. Great. So I'd like you to tell us the story that you've heard from your most recent partner, but again, tell it in first person as though it's your own story.
Okay, hi everyone. My most proud and happy moment was when I just left everything without telling anyone and went off to an unknown place for trekking and an expedition on my own. That was really proud. Nobody knew where I was going. And they, I think, later found out and, scolded or whatever, but that moment was very nice. And another thing that I'm really proud of is the fact that I left a very high-paying job for something which was low-paying but more satisfactory in terms of, other factors. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
These are my two.
Thank you very much.
Stories.
Thank you. Thanks. Great stuff. Anybody else like to come up and share? Yes, sir. Come on up. I know you're very familiar with this stage already.
So, working in an MNC, there was a recruitment in which a team was selected, and I was the youngest one nominated for it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Let's have one more. Let's have one more. Madam, there. Would you like to come on up? Yes.
Hi, for me, my pride moment is when people around me come to me and tell me that I have been a mentor for them. They look up to me and they take my guidance and they take my support. That's when I feel really, really proud of myself, having achieved something.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's great. What lovely, lovely, lovely stories. Listening. That's what that exercise is about. It's about listening. How many of you found that when I asked you to share the story that you had heard, first of all, went, I wasn't really listening. I was too busy thinking of my own story. Did anybody have a bit of that? Yeah, I know I certainly did. The first time I did that exercise, I realized I hadn't really been listening to the other person telling their story because I was too busy thinking about what I was going to say. And in storytelling, I think listening is one of the most vital elements. If you're not a good listener, you're not going to be a good storyteller. There is so much listening that you need to do as you are telling a story. Whether it's in sharing an anecdote in an informal conversation, or whether you're making a presentation in a conference, or whether you are standing on a stage and performing a story, listening is crucial.
If I may just chime in with that. As you may or may not have noticed in the program, I'm severely visually impaired, so I can see where you are, I can see colors, I can see movement, but I can't see you. But for 13 years, until new technology came online, as in iPhones and iPads, I was unable to read text. That's why I became a storyteller, so listening is crucial. The reason I can tell stories is if I can hear a story, I've got it. And I would still say that the majority of the stories I tell are things that I have never seen written down. Well, story is older than writing. Thank you. Sorry, Emily.
I was also going to, that's great. Thank you, Giles. I was going to add to that as you are telling a story, you need to be listening. And Giles, you must find this especially, that you are listening to your audience. You're listening for responses. You're listening to see, you're listening in order to see how the audience are feeling. If that makes sense.
Well, I have to because I've never seen my audience. But I mean, how do you do it?
Yeah, even though I can see you all very well, it's very important for me to listen to your response because that feeds my creativity, my telling. So it's very important for me to also listen to my audience's response.
It's also a matter of listening to yourself and listening to the story as well, isn't it? It's that thing of being your own director as you are telling the story. Again, whether you're in a conference or on stage or in conversation, you're listening to the people that you're telling the story to, but also listening to the story. You're in several places at the same time. I don't know if you find this as well.
Yes,
You have to be completely in your body physically with the story. So the story is inside you. It's a living thing inside you.
You step into the story,
Yeah.
and it takes you where the story weaves its way. So
Yeah.
you're already there in all those places, places that you're visually trying to describe.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't know if you find that you're also a step ahead in the story. You know where the story is going. So you're in the moment in the story, but also you're in the next step of the story because you've got to know in which direction the story is going. And of course with your audience too.
Yes.
I'd also wanted to, ask you people, and feel free to respond to this. You know, sometimes you're telling very short stories, and sometimes that's easier to remember. Yesterday, what Tim did was like a 45-minute long story, and all of you do that. Now, to remember each step, you know, where it goes. Of course, you know the story, but then there could be people in the audience who've heard that story, and you might miss something or not miss something. How do you do that all? Okay, Giles.
Well, here's an interesting thing, because memory is essentially, for most of us, it's visual. I know this because I grew up sighted. And so I lost my sight when I was 25. So I still think like a sighted person, even though I am a sighted person, just my sight is what specialists call rubbish. But I still think that way. So when I'm listening to stories, and do you find that when you listen to a story, you see pictures in your head? So this is a really key element. When I'm listening to a story to learn it, and I often say to children who say, I want to tell, I'm encouraging children to tell, they say, yeah, but I'll never remember the words. I say, you don't need to remember the words. Remember the pictures. Go through those in your head. See it as if you're watching a film. And then when you want to tell it, you have that film running. The words come to your mouth as easily as breathing. Does that make sense? Yeah? So that visualization is a key part of it. And oftentimes people say to me, children don't say this, it's more grown-ups. They say, oh, but I could never tell a story like you. And I say, well, true, but I could never tell a story like you.
True.
Don't get hung up about that. Just tell it your way, because that's something no one can do. So yeah, visualization is kind of key to... Interestingly, people who are born blind, parts of their brain which would otherwise have been used to process vision get used for memory instead. Because blind people have to rely on memory completely. And they get incredibly skilled, which is why sighted people like to imagine that blind people have superpowers.